Hey, what's going on, guys? Mariana5 here for Raise Your Edge, and I'm here with Follow86, and we're going to review a hand today that was posted in our Discord group a couple weeks back. So, picking up the action here, we have a 10-25 game, but this is in, I believe, like Hong Kong dollars or something, so it's probably equivalent to like, I don't know, 1-2, I think. Not exactly sure, but it's not as high as the stakes you might think it is. So, Reg raises under the gun. First decision, what do you think here? I mean, it's pretty straightforward, I think, but any thoughts?
Yeah, I think in most lineups we definitely want to opt for a call here. I can see when only super aggressive opponents are behind that we are only threading and folding, and then pocket eights probably sometimes a thread, but that's about it. I mean, most live games is definitely a fine call pre-flop. We just call mainly for set value slash overpair value. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think just calling her again, as you say in most games, pretty tough to find lineups where you can't profitably call.
Yeah, that's probably the worst live game ever.
Yeah, yeah. So big flop. Checks to us. Do you think we should be trapping here or just start betting right away?
Yeah, I think you should always follow the rule. The stronger the hand, the more often you want to bet it. And yeah, this hand is definitely one of the strongest hands we can ever have. So I can definitely find reasons why we should check a hand like Jacks or Jack 8 on this board texture, because we block so much from villain's continuing range.
Mm-hmm.
But here with pocket eights, our opponent can still have all the draws, all the middling type hands, and obviously all the jacks. So I think this is definitely a nice candidate to just bet flop, bet turn, bet river, get value from all the nines and tens and sevens, maybe even slow played aces and kings. Or do you think the regular is always betting hands like queens, kings, aces on the flop?
No, I mean he should definitely be checking over pairs a lot here. I think. So yeah, there's a lot of value to get. I agree. We should start betting here for sure. I mean, what do you think about? I mean, obviously checking it's not the end of the world. There's some scenarios. It's nice to
Yeah.
have some boats in your range, but yeah, I think here it's just unblocking. It's really nice, and we got a full house, so try to build a pot to keep it simple. What do you think about sizing here?
I think sizing wise, we have all the options. We can go small, we can go big. The question is always how light you want to value bet. So I
Mm-hmm.
think here, also don't mind value betting a hand like ace eight or nines or tens. So probably sticking to a somewhat smaller sizing. So like
Mm-hmm.
one third, 100, yeah, something, 120, 130. And we're not super deep, so super often we're still able to get stacks in or just a lot of big blinds on future streets. And like I mentioned, we are just able to value bet fairly thin. And also our opponents will make more mistakes on this board texture. Obviously, when they have a really strong hand like a jack, they are raising anyway. So we definitely want to extract more value against draws or even weak hands, right? Like queen, king, queen with a club, something like this, that
Mm-hmm.
could go crazy when we bet small, but will never go crazy when we bet big.
Yeah, I like that. I like those thoughts for sure. So just betting out here. I really like the sizing small, keep the ranges wide, and our
Yeah,
hand.
really, really nice.
Yeah, our hand's so invulnerable too, right? I mean, you don't have to think
Yeah.
about protection at all. I mean, if they outdraw you, they outdraw you, but not
Yeah,
going
I
to happen
think
often here. So,
it's definitely the wrong thought how to get my stack in, right? So how much do I
mm-hmm.
need to bet flop to get stacks in on the river? So on the flop I bet 400, right? On the turn I bet 1k, on the river I bet 2k. This is just the wrong thought, I think, because always think which hands you also want to bet on the flop, and then you find the correct sizing. It's way easier this way, because otherwise, yeah, your opponents will just fold way too many hands. And like you mentioned, it's unvulnerable hand basically, and yeah, don't mind when he floats a little bit wider than usual.
Yeah, for sure. So, unknown actually raises in position. Um, I
Sweet.
think, yeah, obviously we're loving life here. Only lose to like a couple combos, really unlikely. So I think we just want to be calling this. I would say almost always.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
just
This would
yeah,
be also a blunder in my eyes when we 3-bet flop, because
yeah,
I cannot find a single bluff that I would 3-bet flop with when we are three-handed, especially given the positions, right, against an under the gun race, because he can have all the ace jacks and stuff. So yeah, with my strong draws, I would also opt for a call like yeah, ace x clubs, 10-9 clubs, whatever, right? We will also call, so it makes no sense to only 3-bet pocket eights. And again, like I mentioned, we hope that he is bluff raising, and when he raises with something like king queen and one club and we 3-bet flop, he's just folding. So we want to give him more room to hang himself, so definitely opting for a call. And if he has a jack, we get a lot of money in on future streets anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the only scenario where we'd want to re-raise is if this guy was a total maniac, sputard. In
Yeah,
that
when we
case,
know
like,
sometimes he's just ripping flop with air, right, with king queen,
yeah, or just like any
then
any
yeah,
flush draws.
yeah, exactly.
But I think people, yeah, definitely, because I think something I noticed too is that people raise like a lot of times if you just bet smaller, people just they don't really know how to react to it a lot of times. Um, I mean, obviously I'm not saying in theory it's necessarily bad to raise for small bets, but I think a lot of people just they go crazy against small bets because they think like there's no way you could ever bet small if you had a big hand, right? Because they don't play that way if they have a big hand. They're just
Yeah,
they're
100%.
betting big, which is that's not even that's fine too. I think in a lot of scenarios, right, bet the strength of your hand, but I think you'll see some like insane hands show up when you bet small. So yeah, you definitely want to keep their bluffs in.
Yep.
So we call, which is nice. Nine on the turn, and this is a pretty sweet card, I think. Obviously, Jack nine gets there, but it's kind of nice because like Queen 10 gets there. I guess the one downside is if he had like 9-10 or something or Queen 9, you'd probably check it. But I think the fact that it completes some draws is kind of nice. So what do you think
Yeah, I
here?
completely agree.
Just going to be checking,
100%.
obviously.
Not the worst
Um,
card, not the worst card in the deck. And I think it's also important not to lead turn when we check flop, cause the turn is not changing too much when he raised polarized on the flop. The turn card is usually not helping us, because we also have not a ton of queen 10 besides queen 10 clubs. That's one combination. So we should still mainly check turn with our range.
yeah, for sure. So he checks. And now he bets. What is that, like 40% pot or so, a little more. So kind of an interesting decision here.
Mm,
The fact that he made it smaller, yeah, it definitely gives us a bit of a decision here. What do you think?
yeah, turn is close. I like both ideas. We have to think, what is he doing, right? I think on the turn he can either have a jack or a flush draw. Maybe occasionally a hand like sevens that he wants to try to go to showdown with.
Hmm.
Um, but I think it's important that he usually will not have a hand like king queen with a club, right? When he fires only 400. I think against a bigger bet, we can include a few more really polarized bluffs. But when someone raises flop and bets turn small again, he either has a super middling type hand, a somewhat good draw, or just a really, really strong hand. And we're out of position. This is a problem in this hand, I think, because we definitely want to get stacks in. We're still a little bit deeper on the turn, so getting it in for 2.6k is definitely a little bit too much to raise. So yeah, I really like a small turn raise just to 1k, 1.1k. And if he has like, yeah, like I mentioned, a hand like sevens or a flush draw, he still has a decision. So with his under pairs, he's definitely folding. With his flush draws and jack X, he's always calling. So we also get more value out of his flush draws, because when the river breaks, we never know if he's going to fire those hands on the river. But if we raise turn small, there's just no way a live player, especially a weaker one, is ever folding turn, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree there. I think a lot of times when they bet small in the turn, I mean, again, this is more a generalization, but I think it is true, is that they just check back river a lot. If they have a hand where he's going to like triple off, a lot of times they're just like bombing turn, right? Because they're thinking, I need to get stacks in by the river. But here,
Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised at all to see something like Jack 7 suited, just bet turn and then check river, right? So you lose that value. As you say, these
Yep.
hands are never going to call a check raise. So I think a small check raise here, not crazy, but just like, I don't know, you can make it like 1,000 or 1,100, right? Just like 2.5, 3x, then have a nice size shove on the river.
Yeah, I agree. Like the sizing.
But unfortunately, he calls, which is, I mean, that's standard too. I shouldn't say unfortunately, it's totally fine too. But yeah, I just expect river to be checked back a lot. And obviously, the river here changes a lot. Super wet cards. So what do you think now? Do you want to donk out or just check and plan on calling a check shove, obviously, and maybe check shoving ourselves I guess if he bets like 1,000, you know, we probably just have to check shove. We lose to like a couple combos like Jack 9, Jack 8, but pocket nines, there is some we lose to, but I think probably have to value jam it, right? At least it'd be close.
Yeah, we have to value jam all the time. I mean, he's probably betting a jack X often enough, and he's definitely betting all his flushes. I mean, he can also have all the nut flushes and stuff. But river is super dicey. As we see, 2.2k effective. River completes all the straights and flushes. So I don't mind having a leading range on the river. When we think about our turn idea, right, that he mainly has a jack or clubs, it probably makes sense to lead on the river against a jack when we exclude most bluffs, right? So when we include a lot of bluffs, we should check because we give him the option to bluff. But on the turn, given his small sizing, we already thought that his betting range is more jack X and clubs. So yeah, jack X probably checking back nearly always on this river card, and yeah, flush is most of the time betting. So yeah, not much we can do. We should definitely just bet fairly big, I would say, on this river card. A jack is still super often calling, even a 10 is calling super often on the river cause it's still live poker, right? People hate folding trips, hate folding straights, even when the flush gets there. So I don't mind betting like 1k or 900, right? So something like 50, 60% pot. I wouldn't go too big. And if he really has a flush and not a jack, the chance is really high that he's just shoving river himself.
Yeah. I mean, definitely some looser players would. I think. Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you. I think betting out here does make a lot of sense in these games. And then, yeah, maybe just around like 1,000 or something. I mean, to be honest, if he jammed over it, I'd
Yeah,
be kind of
not
throwing
the
up.
best
It
spot.
sucks, but I think getting the price, we kind of have to call.
Yeah.
But it's like people just don't really. I mean, they make polarization errors where they just overvalue stuff. But it's like that spot where they raise river all in. That's like, not happy.
Yeah, we
So,
definitely hate live. Against
um,
most older gentlemen, it's definitely a fold. There's no question.
yeah. So we'd have a decision, but that shouldn't necessarily just deter us from betting here. So I think he actually does bet out, which is, I do like that. I think he could probably go a little bit
Yep.
bigger, again, because as you say, like people, especially an unknown, like people just they don't know how to fold hands, like if he has a straight here, like, it's a lot of the population is just going to call regardless, even with hands like Jack, King Jack or something, right? Like they don't care if they flop a good hand or if they river a good hand, like they're not thinking in terms of like absolute value too much. So I think again,
No,
probably a
they're
little bit
just
bigger would be
thinking
fine.
about black and white, right? I
Yeah.
agree. So they're just thinking you can have it or not, right? I can just flip a coin, but this is not how the game works. You should think in ranges. But this is the problem on a lot of those river cards, right? When a 7 gets there, a 10 gets there, a queen gets there, a club gets there, it, it gets really dicey because we're out of position. And against his perceived range on the turn, we should just go ahead and check raise small to extract more value from draws and always get the max against Jack X. That's, I think, the important key fact about this hand, because it's easy to get trapped here, I think, because we see, okay, we have the full house, we want to trap our opponent, but when we perceive our opponent on the turn, that he has most of the time a jack or a draw, we can just extract way more value when we go ahead and check raise turn instead of just check call and hate river super often, and we are unsure how big we can bet, right? And if he calls often enough.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, playing out of position is definitely tough. So, yep. So yeah, he bets and we get called. So it's a good spot here. Unsure what he
Yeah,
had, but
definitely
yeah,
take this one.
yeah. So I think that's a pretty interesting hand. Just to keep in mind, the donking rivers is something you can definitely do. Just keep that in mind. When people bet small in the turn, they're less likely to bet river just overall. So look to donk. Yeah, I think that's kind of the main point. And obviously check raise turn. Sometimes if you think the guy just has a lot of weaker hands and draws that he can potentially call still, but we'll give up on the river.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.
All right, see you.